There was the small, mist-draped town of Rivan, winding and narrow between crumbling stone buildings where secrets whispered among the trees and in the heavy air. Among them lived one man. He was called Azim, and he didn't steal bread from doorsteps or snatch valuables from someone's unsuspecting hand. Nay, Azim was somewhat different. He was clever, shrewd, and his goal was always toward the rich, those who have come to power through fraud, avarice, and ruthlessness. Azim's creed was straightforward. He never took from the poor. He thought that justice was best served when one took from the corrupt who had risen to power at other people's expense. The Rivanians had mixed feelings about him. Some considered him a villain, one who lived under the shadows to steal in silence under moonlit nights. Others called him a hero or an avenger in silence, for he could only strike during times when justice was weighed over to the riches. But as the tales told, Azim didn't care much for public opinion, since he wasn't in a rush to be either loved or feared. The only objective he wanted in life was to make the world right, little by little. Azim had studied the richest and most powerful families in Rivan for years, watching everything about them. He knew their habits, their weaknesses, and their darkest secrets. There was, among all the rich men of the town, one person, Malik Zafar, owner of the greatest mansion in Rivan. The man's wealth had come at the expense of many families. Malik was a cruel man. He was a man who had resources and money that the poor had no choice but to spend. They went into debts that they would never get out of. He had constructed his empire upon the very foundation of taking from those who had nothing, exploitation of the law system, and used fear to squelch anyone's breath that dared to challenge him. Azim had been preparing for months. Tonight was the night he would finally bring justice to Malik Zafar. The moon was low in the sky as Azim watched the mansion from the shadows. It was a magnificent building, surrounded by tall iron gates and guarded by soldiers. The guards marched in circles, their heavy boots echoing in the night. But Azim knew the patterns. He had studied them for weeks. He could get past them unnoticed. He climbed the wall of the mansion almost like a cat and silently threw himself onto the ground. The guards were too far to watch his movements, and the windows of the mansion aided him to sneak into it in the shortest time. He crept from hallways, his footsteps light and senses sharp, by letting the scent of expensive wood and polished marble bring him room by room, and finally he reached his goal, the study. That's where Malik stashed his booty, in a safe so thick only an iron samurai could muscle it open. According to rumor, gold and jewels and mostly papers with deepest crimes meant to seal Malik's fate awaited him. It was Azim's shot at killing Malik. With dexterous fingers, Azim opened the safe. The door creaked open there to the treasures, but with that step, as he was about to stretch his hands for the gold coins, a very faint voice made him stop. "Take whatever you want. Just help me." Azim skipped a beat of his heart. He turned, prepared to fight with his hand ready on the dagger at his waist, but what he saw in the darkness spilled his stomach. In the dim light of the room stood a frail old man, shackled to a chair, his face pale and gaunt, his clothes torn. It was clear that the man had been there for a long time, and his body bore the marks of suffering. Azim's instinct was to keep moving, take what he had come for, and go out of the mansion without a trace. But something in the old man's eyes, some desperation, pleading, stopped him. "Who are you?" Azim asked softly. The man coughed weakly. His throat was dry. "I was Malik's accountant. I worked for him for many years, till I learned the truth. Malik didn't make his money. He stole it. He ruined families, tore down businesses, and took from people what did not belong to him. I tried to get the word out about him, and they imprisoned me here. They've kept me here for months, waiting on someone to show up." Azim's mind was racing. He had never seen anything like this before. For years, he had stolen from the rich, but he had never thought of the people behind those riches, the victims. the faces who had been crushed by the weight of corruption. He felt a stirring inside him, a new understanding. It wasn't just about stealing, it was about doing something greater. Azim did not blink. He knew what he was to do. With swift fingers, he freed the chains at the old man's wrists, then helped him stand. "Can you walk?" The old man nodded weakly but stubbornly. "I think so." With each other they ran as fast, and reaching the door, Azim made his decision. He could not run with the gold and flee without making Malik compensate for what he had done. He must let people know the truth. Azim gathered all the papers from the safe, the deeds, the contracts, the records of Malik's corrupt dealings, and put them into a bag. He took the gold and showered it across the town, on the doorsteps of the poor, in the hands of the hungry, at the feet of those that suffered under Malik's rule. He didn't merely want to rob Malik. He wanted to take away from him, to bring down the delusion of authority that Malik so carefully constructed for himself. The two, Azim and the old man, disappeared into the night as daylight broke. Townsmen were waking up to a new world. The people of Rivan had realized by dawn's coming up the true identity of their oppressor. Gold, belonging to the corrupted man now, was theirs. All those papers, written with accounts of his evil acts, lay there in the town square. It didn't take long for the authorities to take action. Malik Zafar was arrested, his mansion seized, and his wealth redistributed to the people he had exploited. But Azim was gone, and his name was the stuff of legend, told and retold by the townspeople. He was no more just a thief, but had turned into something, an icon of justice, a reminder that in the darkest of corners there was a possibility of change.